Hilchos Brachos Perek Revi'i, the laws of blessings. Chapter 4, we're focused on Birkat HaMazon. We're going to get to other blessings later in the halachot. Today we're again focused on the after blessings specifically for bread, and also what we learned about the end of yesterday's chapter, Bracha Achat Me'en Shalosh, that sometimes after you eat mizonot, baked goods, or the fruits of Israel, or wine, you make a special blessing, after blessing, that summarizes all three of the blessings of Birkat HaMazon. So let's go. Today we're focused mainly on what's called Shinui Makom. How does changing a place affect whether you have to make Birkat HaMazon or not? So the Rambam begins. Halacha Aleph. Kol mevarech Birkat HaMazon o bracha achat me'en shalosh. Anybody who needs to make the Birkat HaMazon, the blessing after bread, or the one blessing which is me'en shalosh, a summary of three, tzarich levarech ota bamakom she'achal. You have to eat it in the place where you ate. The place where you ate is defined as the room where you ate. So this is a big room over here. If you ate your sandwich in that corner, you don't have to actually bench in that corner. Technically, you can just bench over here as long as you're in the same room, or some even say as long as you can see your original place, which could be you're even outside the door, but you're looking inside and you can see your place. Or let's say you're in the same room, but there's a big wall, and you can't see your place. Now, according to that opinion, you won't be able to make Birkat HaMazon because you have to see your place. It has to be the same place that you ate. By the way, what if you eat in two places? So you have to have in mind, if you know you're going to have a meal in two places, let's say you're sitting in your house, you're starting breakfast, then you're going to go to the meeting at your office and you're going to continue eating your sandwich. So when you wash, you have to have in mind that you're going to go to two places. Then if you do, you make Birkat HaMazon in the second place. If not, then you have to bench in the first place, and only then you can leave and go to the second place and wash again and have another meal again.
Is it limited to two or like?
Huh? No, it's not limited to two. Huh? You would have to if you didn't have in mind. Yeah, you have to mention again. Achal kishahu mahalech. If you ate while walking, you're not supposed to really, but let's say you did. Yoshev b'makom shepasak v'yivarech. You sit wherever you stopped eating, and that's where you say Birkat HaMazon. Achal kishahu omed. If you ate when you were standing, again, you shouldn't do it for natural reasons, for health reasons, but if you did, Yoshev bimkomo v'yivarech. You cannot make Birkat HaMazon standing. You have to be sitting for extra concentration. Shachach levarech Birkat HaMazon. Let's say you forgot to bench. V'nizkar kodem she'itakel HaMazon shebimayav. And you remembered before the food digested, before 72 minutes passed. Since you ate, mivarech b'makom shenizkar. You do Birkat HaMazon in the place where you remembered. Wherever you are when you remember, that's where you make the blessing. But that's only if you forgot. V'im hayam mezid. If you were on purpose, you're sitting over here, and you didn't make Birkat HaMazon purposely, and you went away, then chozer limkomo mevarech. Halacha says you have to go back to your place and do Birkat HaMazon. So the Rambam divides between forgetfulness and purposefulness. You should know that la halacha, we don't differentiate. Whatever way you are, you should do your best to come back to the place where you bench. The Talmud says, if a person forgot a wallet, and a person was in a house and he forgot a wallet, wouldn't he come back to get the wallet? So if you ate and you owe Hashem a blessing, you should for sure come back. And the Talmud says there was a student who ate on the top floor of a building, and then he went all the way down, and he realized that he didn't bench. So he walked all the way back up, and he did the Birkat HaMazon in the right place, and when he came back, he found the wallet of gold. He was rewarded for that. But the Rambam nevertheless differentiates, says if you forgot, you can bench where you remembered. If you were only if you're on purpose went away, then you have to go back and bench. Let's say on purpose you didn't bench in the right place, and you were supposed to go back, but you didn't go back. You said Birkat HaMazon where you are. According to the Rambam, you fulfilled your obligation. According to the other authorities, you haven't. However, L'maaseh, the Shulchan Aruch rules like the Rambam in this case. If on purpose you left your place, but then instead of going back, you benched in your place, that's okay. Let's say you said Birkat HaMazon while standing or while walking. You shouldn't have. You should have stopped, but you didn't. It's okay. Fulfill your obligation. But initially, lo yivarech Birkat HaMazon, v'lo bracha she'me'en shalosh, ela kishehu yoshev uvamakom she'achal. You should not say Birkat HaMazon or the 1 in 3 blessing, except when you're sitting and if you're in the place where you ate. Says the Rambam halacha bet. Misha nistapek lo im beirach hamotzi or lo beirach hamotzi. You're sitting in the middle of a meal, deep into your pastrami sandwich, and you don't remember, did I say hamotzi or not? So the rule is, eino chozero mevarech, you never go back and recite a blessing on the food if you're in doubt. It's not biblical, and the rule is safek brachot lahakel. Whenever you're in doubt about making a blessing that's rabbinic, you go leniently. However, shachach levarech hamotzi, if you know for sure that you forgot to say hamotzi, im nizkar ad shelo gamar seudato, so long as you remembered before you finish the meal, chozer mevarech, you go and make a blessing again. Because the next bite, just because you were wicked, as the commentaries say, just because you did the wrong thing by not making a blessing on the first bite, doesn't mean you should be wicked again and not do a blessing on the second bite. So as long as you're in the middle of the meal, you can still make another hamotzi. However, let's say you only remember that you didn't make hamotzi after you finished the whole sandwich. Now you cannot go back and make another blessing because you finished eating. However, the Shulchan Aruch says, if you're not stuffed, find some more bread and eat something more. Even if you finished your meal in your head, eat some more bread so you can at least say hamotzi on that piece of bread. Halacha Gimel. Haya ochel b'bayit zeh. This is an important halacha, comes up pretty often. If you're eating in one house, upasak seudato v'halach lebayit acher, and you stopped your meal and you went to another house, and by house we mean another building. Okay, so you're in your house, you're eating breakfast, you left, went into your car, now you're in your office. O shehaya ochel, or you're eating in your house, ukra'ahu chavero ledaber imo, and your friend knocks on your door, and he wants to have a conversation with you. V'yatza lo lepetach beito v'chazar, and you went to the doorway of the house and you came back. And the commentaries here say that you had to actually walk out the door, because even if you're still within the doorway and you can see your original place, it hasn't your place hasn't been affected. But let's say you went out of the door, so you're considered to be out of the building. Ho'il v'shina mekomo, says the Rambam. Since you changed your place, you have now stopped your first meal. Tzarich levarech lemafreya al ma she'achal, and therefore you have to make birkat hamazon retroactively on what you ate. V'chozer u'mevarech batchila hamotzi, and restart the meal when you come back and make hamotzi again. V'achar kach yigmor sudato, and then you can finish your meal. Now the Rambam talks about over here bread. He refers to everything. However, halacha lemaaseh, we have a very important rule which is on the screen over here. This is called davar hata'un bracha la'acharav bimkomo. It's a term in halacha which means something which requires its after blessing to be said in the place where you ate. Birkat hamazon, we just learned before, has to be done in the place where you ate. When you drink water, technically you don't have to make bracha achrona where you ate. So baked goods and hamotzi goes into one category. Halacha lemaaseh is, if any way you have to come back to the place where you ate to make birkat hamazon, even if you went to the door, it's okay. It's not considered to be a stop to your meal. You have to go back and finish of where you started, but you don't have to make a new blessing hamotzi, because anyways you're going to have to go back to finish your meal over there. However, let's say it would have been a snack or a drink, then this halacha would apply, and if you changed houses or you went to the doorway, then you would have to make a new blessing. Halacha dalet, chaverim shayu yoshvim le'echol. Let's say you have a group of friends, sat down to eat. We're sitting here, okay, around this table, let's say we had some food. V'yatzu likrat chatan o likrat kala. Then we hear, coming down Ventura Boulevard, is a groom and bride, and it's a mitzvah to go greet them. So we all decided to go leave. Im hinichu sham zaken o chola. If even one person remained, even if he's an old person or a sick person, somebody stayed at the table, chozrin lim koman v'gomrin sudatan. We can come back and finish our meal as if nothing happened, because this older sick person kept the meal going for us. Ve'enan tzrichim levarech shniya, without having to make a second blessing. But if they left nobody there, everybody went to go see the Chatan Kala, the moment they go out, they require Birkat Hamazon retroactively, and ideally they should bench even before they leave. If they know that they're all going to go, they should all stop, say Birkat Hamazon, and then go out. When you come back, they have to have a new blessing to be made once again to start the meal. The Rambam says, again, the same rules according to Rambam apply both in hamotzi and if they were sitting together for a drink or to eat fruit. Anybody who changes his place has in effect stopped his meal. Therefore he must make birkat hamazon retroactively for what he ate, and he must go back and make a second blessing to begin with when he wants to start eating again. But if you change your place from corner to corner in one home, no need to make a new blessing, because corner to corner is still in the same room, and it's okay. However, this is a proper fig tree, okay? So you can see why the halacha makes sense. Many fig trees in your backyard are going to be very thin, so you don't really understand that. These are proper fig trees. A person started off eating on the east side of a fig tree, and then he goes and to the other side and he wants to eat. There's no way you can see from one side to the other. So you can't consider it like one room, even though it's so close to each other. But it's considered to be a hefsek. You have to go back and make a blessing. The commentaries say, number one, you can't see yourself on both sides. And number two, when you're outside next to a tree, you're not in a room that's holding you together. So therefore, some commentators want to say, let's say you're sitting in a big hall, and there's a massive structure in the middle of the hall. And you started on one side, ate on the other side. According to some commentaries, it's okay, you're still in the same room. Unlike the fig tree, where you're outside, there's no mechitzot, there's no partitions or walls that are holding you in. Others say no, it's all about whether you can see yourself. So here, you can't see yourself on both sides, so if you're in a room and there's a massive something, and you can't see yourself on both sides, then moving from one to the other would require you to make a new blessing. Halacha vav. According to many commentaries, the next halacha is talking about bracha rishona, the blessing before eating bread, even though the subject of this chapter is Birkat HaMazon, but nevertheless the Rambam put it over here, and it's a bit confusing why exactly, but that's another halacha about making hamotzi. Beirach ala pat. If you make a blessing on bread, patar et haparperet she'ochlin bahen apat. You have exempted any, literally translates as relish, but it means like any accompanying foods that you eat the bread with. Miminei hatavshil uperot v'chayotze bahen, cooked foods, fruit, or anything like it. Aval im beirach ala parperet lo patar et apat. But if you made a blessing only on the accompanying food, even if you're planning to eat it with the bread, of course you haven't exempted the bread, because the bread is the all-inclusive blessing. Yesterday we learned that if you have an ikar v'tafel, a main dish and a side dish, the main dish covers the side dish. But that's only when you only want the side dish as part of the main dish. Here, you want both. Let's say you want bread and you want egg salad, right? So maybe you would think since you want both, you have to make a blessing on both. No, the Rambam teaches us a blessing on bread includes everything. Once you made hamotzi, you cover it all. The other way doesn't work. Berach al maaseh kedera. Let's say you made a blessing on things that are cooked. Maaseh kedera we saw yesterday. I'm just going to show you a picture from yesterday's slides. This is maaseh kedera. Where am I? This one over here. Okay? Like basically when you take grain and you split it and you cook it, or matzah balls would be called maaseh kedera. That's another example. So things that are cooked in a pot, but they're not hamotzi. They're using flour and water, but they're not hamotzi. So those things, patarat hatavshil, they also have an inclusive power. They exempt cooked foods. But if you make a blessing on a cooked dish that comes along with that, lo patarat maaseh kedera, you have not exempted the flour dish that's cooked in a pot because it's more on a higher level and it includes others don't include it. Some commentators say it's talking actually about Birkat HaMazon. Birkat HaMazon on bread, it covers the after blessing for other things. But the simple meaning is that it's Bracha Rishona, the original blessing. Halacha Zayin. Gamar belibo, milechol o milishtot. You're sitting at a meal, and in your head, in your heart, you decided I'm done. And then in your head, you say, oh, I still want to eat more. You're sitting in the same chair. But because your mind was diverted from the meal, you have to make a new blessing, hamotzi. So long as you didn't decide in your heart. In your mind, you have in mind to continue eating more of the meal. Even if you took a time break of all day, you don't have to make a second blessing. Come to say we don't mean all day. Because obviously, once the food digests, you have to make a new blessing. But the point is that if you're sitting and you have in mind to eat, even if you interrupt for a long time, it's okay. L'maaseh, Shulchan Aruch says that your mind is not powerful enough to stop your meal. You have to actually do mayim acharonim. You have to wash the fingertips of the hands. That's what says you're done eating. But if it's just a decision in your head, then you could actually go back and continue eating, because as long as you're sitting in the same place. Halacha chet, hayu shotin. If people were drinking, they were already finished eating, but they were having some wines, maybe a little before Shabbos taster or middle of the day having some wine. Va'amru, and everybody said, not just one person, the whole group said, you know what? Bo nevarech Birkat HaMazon. Guys, let's do Birkat HaMazon. Oh, it was Friday night coming into Shabbos. They said, Bo nekadesh kiddush hayom. You know what? Let's pause. Let's make kiddush. The moment they decide that together, ne'esar aleihem lishtot ad sheyivarchu o sheyikadshu. They can no longer continue drinking till they make the Birkat HaMazon or till they make kiddush. And if they would want to go back and drink some more before Birkat HaMazon or before Kiddush, even if they're not allowed to, they have to make a new blessing. Because they actively, together, stopped their current meal. But let's say it would be Shabbat evening, going out to Saturday night. And they said, Bo v'navdil, They're sitting having some wine together, and they're like, you know what? Let's make Havdalah. Ein tzrichim lachzor levarech. They don't have to go back and make a new blessing. Just saying, let's make Havdalah isn't a powerful declaration. Why? Because there's an obligation to take in Shabbos early. But there's no obligation to make a distinction between Shabbat and the weekday in this way. Ultimately, when Shabbat comes out, you'll make Havdalah. But by saying, let's make Havdalah, you aren't saying any important declaration. And therefore, your meal hasn't stopped. You don't have to make a new blessing. If people gathered around just to drink wine, a wine tasting event, and somebody brought out a new type of wine, they were drinking red wine, somebody brought black wine. They were drinking old wine, somebody brought new wine. They don't have to make Borei Pri Hagafen again. But you do make a blessing to thank Hashem for the new type of wine. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hatov v'hametiv. Thank you, Hashem, that you're good and you do good. You give us delicious wines. Halacha Yud ein mevarchin al ochel min kol haochalin v'lo al mashke min kol hamashkin. A very general rule for blessings. You never make a blessing on food or on drink ad sheyavo lifanav, till it's in front of you. It has to be there. You have to see it. Shulchan Aruch even adds you have to hold it in your right hand when you make a blessing. If you made the blessing and then they brought it to you, you literally must make a new blessing again, because the first blessing wasn't there in front of when the object was in front of you. Commentaries say if you know that if you absolutely know they're going to bring it in front of you when you finish the blessing, then it's okay. You know that story of the kid who he wanted an apple, but his father wouldn't give him an apple, so he made the blessing and his father had to give him the apple. And it was like a metaphor for Mashiach. We should ask Hashem for Mashiach. We say the blessings, Hashem will have to bring Mashiach, because when you make a blessing, you have to bring it. Natal ochel ubeirach alav. Let's say you picked up an apple and you made a blessing on it. V'nafal miyado v'nisraf. While you're saying the blessing, it falls out of your hand, and not just it falls out of your hand, it gets burnt into a fire. You're over the barbecue, you're roasting marshmallows, you're holding the marshmallow, and then boom, it falls into the fire. Or shtafo nahar, or you're by a river, it falls out of your hand, the river sweeps it away. Notel acher v'chazer mevarech alav. You can right away take another one, but you must make a new blessing. Afal pishu mioto amin, even though it's the same type, because the original one that you had in mind for fell away. V'tzarich lomar, and you have to say Baruch Shem k'vod malchuto l'olam va'ed abracha rishona on the original blessing which you made, kedesh lo lotzi shem shamayim levatala, so you don't mention God's name for nothing. However, this is all when it comes to things that you had in mind to eat. But omed adam alamat hamayim, a person can stand by a channel of water. Umevarech, and make a blessing, v'shoteh, and then drink whatever water comes to him. Afal pisha hamayim shayu lefanav b'shat habracha, enam hamayim sheshata, even though the water which was in front of you when you made the blessing already flowed away, and it's not the same water, because to begin with, that's what you had in mind. When you have the apple in your hand, you want to eat this apple. So when this apple falls away, another apple needs another bracha. But when you're by flowing water, you know that the water is going to keep flowing. That's why today's commentary says this is very common by a water fountain. You're in an amusement park, you have a water fountain. You turn on the water fountain, you make a blessing. You don't have to drink that water. So long as it keeps flowing and you know you had in mind, so then it counts. And when you make a blessing on the water fountain, then you can just drink whatever it is. But they do say you have to turn it on. You can't say a blessing while the water fountain is off and then turn it on. You have to turn it on, so the water is going, and then you drink whatever water comes to you. Halacha Yud Aleph. Dvarim haba'im b'toch hasuda. Anything that comes to the table during the meal, v'hin machamat hasuda. And they're coming as part of the meal, because of the meal. In other words, they're meant to be eaten with the bread or with the dishes. They don't require any blessing before or after. The hamotzi in the beginning, b'kat hamazon in the end, exempts everything. Because everything is considered secondary to the meal. However, things that aren't coming because of the meal, they're a closure, they're like dessert, something outside of the meal. Shabau betoch hasuda, but they came to the table during the meal before you said Birkat Hamazon. Tu'unin bracha lifnehem v'lo la'achareihem. You must make a blessing before. That's why we do blessing on dessert. Come to the table, you make a blessing, but you don't have to do it afterwards. The Birkat Hamazon covers it. Udvarim habaim la'achara suda, but anything which comes after the whole meal is over, bein machmat hasuda, bein shalom machmat hasuda, whether it's related or not related to the meal, tu'unin bracha lifnehen ula achareihem, they require their own blessings. I know you're still sitting at the table. Doesn't make a difference. What you're eating now wasn't part of the meal. It was all after the meal. And therefore it requires its own bracha before and after. Halacha Yud Bet. B'Shabbatot u'v'yamim tovim. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, u'bisudat hakazat hadam. And in the meal people used to make after they let blood, it was considered a health habit to once in a while take some blood out, and it was quite a big amount of blood, so afterwards the person would need to eat a lot to re-enliven himself, but they made a whole big su'udah. So at this meal, or if you're eating a meal after you come out of the bathhouse, and anything similar to them, in which case, sha'adam kovea sudato ala yayin, where a person makes wine a very important staple in his meal, on all these three occasions, in beirach al hayayin shalifnei hamazon, once you make wine, a blessing on wine before the meal, for example, kiddush. When we make kiddush, we haven't yet washed. We make a hagafen on the wine as a prequel to the meal. But since it's an incredibly important part of the meal, so it can cover things that come later. In berach al hayayin shelifnei hamazon, pataret hayayin sheshata la'achar hamazon kodem sheyavarech berkat hamazon. That blessing exempts any wine that you're going to eat after your food, so long as it's before you bench, before you make berkat hamazon. Aval b'sh'arei yamim, but on a regular day, where wine is not an important staple, tzarich lachzor ulevarech batchila al hayayin shel achar hamazon. If you would have drink wine before the meal started, you'd have to make a new blessing on the wine after the meal started. Bala hen yayin b'toch hamazon. General rule: if you're sitting around a table with people and wine comes to the table in the middle of the meal, kol echad ve'echad mevarech la'atzmo. Everyone should make his own bracha, his own hagafen. She'en bet habli'ah panui she'yanu amen. Usually you want one guy to lead, everyone answers. But when everyone's in the middle of eating, your throat is not clear to necessarily answer amen, and therefore it might be a danger. You might choke if you had to listen to somebody else. So therefore everyone makes their own bracha. They know poter yain shel achar hamazon, and wine that comes in the middle of a meal does not exempt wine after a meal. Only wine before a meal has the power to do that. But wine in the middle of the meal doesn't exempt any other wine.